March the 17th, 1967, near the Cambodian border, Tay Ninh Province, Vietnam. The sun hasn't risen yet, but the jungle already feels awake, breathing shifting, whispering with the movement of insects, and the distant murmur of something larger, lurking out of sight. A thick fog clings to the treetops like damp cotton, and every surface is slick with dew. The dim pre-dawn glow is barely enough for the patrol to see more than a few feet ahead. Second Lieutenant Alan Whitaker, 24 years old, steps carefully along the narrow trail carved between towering bamboo stalks. His M16 hangs from his shoulder, one hand gripping the fore-end, the other hovering near the safety. Behind him, the rest of 3rd Platoon, Bravo Company, 2nd Battalion, 14th Infantry Regiment follow in a silent, single-file line, 32 American soldiers pushing deeper into territory that most local villagers avoid after dark. The jungle air is heavy with the scent of wet earth-rotting leaves and something sharp burnt charcoal from a distant campfire maybe. You can feel how tightly the forest compresses the patrol, like it's trying to squeeze them into a single point. There is no wind, no birds. Just the thudding heartbeat in your ears and the soft rustle of boots sinking into mud. Whitaker stops suddenly and raises a closed fist. The column freezes. Corporal James Danister. The radio man steps forward with a whisper. Something up. LT. Whitaker squints at the ground. Trails too clean, he murmurs, too inviting. It's barely noticeable unless you look for it, a faint scuff on the dirt, a fragment of broken bamboo lying at a slightly unnatural angle, almost as if it had been placed there deliberately. Vietnam teaches soldiers fast nothing in this jungle is accidental. Whitaker gestures for the point man specialist Leon Hargrove to move up. Hargrove is lean, quiet, and attentive, the kind of soldier who notices details others miss. He kneels beside the trail, brushing away dirt with the edge of his bayonet. A moment later, he stops, glances up at Whitaker, and slowly parts a cluster of ferns. Beneath them, a thin monofilament line nearly invisible. A tripwire. Hargrove swallows. Sir, M26 grenade. Rigged low. They wanted us to walk right into it. Whitaker leans closer without touching anything. The grenade is tucked inside a hollowed bamboo segment pin, removed safety lever held down by tension from the tripwire stretched across the trail at shin height. A single step from any man in the platoon would have sent shrapnel tearing back through the line. The Viet Cong didn't need to be here physically. Their presence was woven into the jungle itself, silent, patient, lethal. A cold awareness settles over the entire patrol as the men realize what else might be waiting for them. Every leaf, every patch of soil, every shadow now feels like a potential doorway to sudden death. And the booby traps aren't random. They're crafted with intimate understanding of where American boots are most likely to land. Hargrove clips the wire with surgical precision. He lifts the grenade out of its bamboo cradle and exhales shakily. They reset this one recently, he says, pointing to the fresh cut on the bamboo. Past few hours, maybe, which means the Viet Cong could still be somewhere close. The jungle seems to press in tighter. Whitaker signals for the platoon to fan out slightly, keep eyes scanning both tree lines. No talking, no unnecessary movement, only the careful rhythmic progression of boots, stepping exactly where the man in front stepped. But just as they resume the patrol, a faint click echoes from the right flank. Private Eddie Collins, barely 19, freezes mid-step. His breath evaporates into the cold morning air. The men nearest to him notice instantly he shouldn't be standing on that patch of darker soil. It looks disturbed. Recently disturbed. Whitaker whispers urgently, "Collins, don't move." The private's eyes widen. Sweat beads on his forehead despite the cool morning air. Beneath his boot, he feels a subtle metal give, like a thin circular plate flexing downward. A pressure-activated mine. Maybe a Soviet-made POMZ stake mine, maybe a locally built pressure canister packed with ball bearings. Either way, lifting his foot could trigger it. The platoon stiffens, each man holding his breath. Hargrove inches forward again, dropping to his stomach. He studies the disturbed soil around Collins' boot, using only the faintest push of his fingertips to sweep away the top layer. Then he sees it. Not a mine, not exactly. A bamboo tube set vertically into the ground with a wooden pressure cap disguised under mud. A classic VC toe popper smaller than a soda can but devastating enough to shred Collins' foot or leg. Hargrove looks up at Whitaker. "Sir, this one's live." He meets Collins's terrified gaze. "You're gonna be okay, kid. Just stay with me." Every second stretches thin as wire. The platoon stands suspended in the hush of the waking jungle, surrounded by traps they can't yet see, facing an enemy that strikes without showing its face. The war in Vietnam isn't fought only with bullets. It's fought with the fear of stepping forward. And now, with dawn rising through the trees, 3rd Platoon realizes they have walked into a corridor of lethal ingenuity, grenade tripwires behind them, pressure traps beneath them, and a maze of bamboo trigger devices waiting ahead. The jungle has closed around them, and the hidden war has only just begun. The jungle holds its breath as Specialist Leon Hargrove steadies himself beside Private Eddie Collins's trembling leg. The dim light filtering through the canopy paints both men in mottled patches of green and shadow, like the forest itself is watching them. Collins keeps his eyes locked forward, trying not to think about the explosive hidden under his boot. The rest of the platoon stands frozen, their weapons pointed nowhere in particular because the enemy isn't a person. Right now, it's the ground, the trees, the bamboo. Hargrove examines the bamboo tube more closely. He sees the thin wooden cap beneath Collins's heel, thin enough to break with just a few ounces of pressure. Inside the tube, sharpened metal fragments rest above a small charge, likely packed with homemade explosive. A classic Viet Cong trick, minimal resources, maximum damage. Collins Hargrove whispers, his voice calm but clipped. "I'm gonna place my hands on your boot. When I say so, you shift your weight toward me. Just a hair. Got it." Collins' voice is barely audible. "Yeah." Hargrove plants his elbows deep into the mud for stability. He gently presses his palms to the sides of Collins' boot, spreading the pressure as evenly as he can. The platoon watches with strained breaths. Even Lieutenant Whitaker can feel his pulse pounding in his temples. "Okay, lean into me, just a bit." Collins' shifts jaw clenched. The wood creaks under his boot, a hairline snap louder than any gunshot in his mind. Hargrove instantly redirects the pressure with both hands, catching the transfer of weight before the cap fully collapses. "Almost there," Hargrove mutters. "Gonna slide your foot toward me, slow." Inch by inch, Collins moves until finally his boot lifts clear. Hargrove lowers the pressure plate gently until it rests on several sticks he braces beneath the soil. Only when the device is stabilized does he let out a shaky breath. Collins drops to his knees, hands trembling. "Jesus." "Thank you, man." Hargrove places a steady hand on his shoulder. "Stay sharp. This won't be the last one." And he's right. Because as the platoon presses onward deeper into the mist-thick jungle, the traps become more cunning and more violent. The trail ahead curves around a cluster of bamboo so tall it forms a cathedral of green columns above the soldiers' heads. Whitaker raises his binoculars to scan ahead, but visibility cuts off at 15 feet. As the platoon advances, Sergeant Paul Rourke, the grizzled squad leader, taps Whitaker's shoulder and points to the right side of the trail. A bundle of bamboo stakes rests behind a screen of ferns. It looks harmless until Rourke nudges Whitaker toward a faint vine tied near the bottom of the stakes. "Bamboo whip trap," Rourke whispers, "deadly as hell." Whitaker crouches to examine it. A thin vine runs from the base of the stakes to a peg in the ground, barely visible beneath the leaf litter. Pulling the vine would release the tension holding the bamboo bundle upright. The stakes, each sharpened to a needlepoint, would whip across the trail with bone-shattering force. "Set to hit someone in the ribs," Rourke mutters, "or the throat." Hargrove joins them, inspecting the trigger mechanism. This one's fresh, too. The cut on the vine's clean. Maybe within the last day. It's a pattern now, fresh traps, nearby presence. The Viet Cong are moving through these same paths, laying devices with precision and expertise that comes only from knowing every inch of the terrain. Whitaker signals for Specialist Thomas Rivera, one of the demolitions experts, to neutralize the trap. Rivera works with quiet confidence, cutting the tension cord, setting the stakes gently back against a tree, and dismantling the vine trigger. But the dismantling process reveals something much worse. Behind the bamboo stakes concealed under a camouflage net of leaves sits a second trap. A small cage-like frame of bamboo connected to a tripwire looped low across the trail. Inside it hangs a rusted U.S. fragmentation grenade, its pin removed. A double trap, one lure to draw attention, another to catch the careful observer. Rourke mutters, "Crafty bastards." Whitaker can only nod grimly. Every time they think they understand the enemy's tactics, the jungle reveals another layer of ingenuity. Just when the platoon begins to move again, a distant rustle breaks the quiet, soft steps, then silence. Someone or something is watching. Whitaker raises a hand, signal hold position. Through the leaves, a flicker of movement. A figure, no. It's gone before he can confirm. Maybe a scout, maybe bait. The platoon advances in staggered formation, now widening gaps between men to minimize the impact of any explosion. The jungle narrows, the air heavy with anticipation. Every soldier's nerves are wired tight, every step deliberate. Then Corporal Danister whispers urgently into Whitaker's ear, "Sir, look ahead." Across the trail, visible only from a certain angle, a thin bamboo rod lies suspended horizontally between two trees. At first glance, it appears like part of the natural forest. But beneath it, half buried in the soil, sits an angled bamboo tube filled with sharpened spikes tipped with something dark and greasy. A pungy stake pit rigged with a bamboo pressure flap. The rod above is the failsafe if the soldier steps over the pit. Instinctively, the rod triggers a second mechanism, a collapsing sidewall filled with more spikes. Rourke spits into the mud. Layered traps. They're funneling us. Whitaker realizes the brutal intent behind the elegant design. The VC aren't just defending the jungle. They're shaping the Americans' movement, herding them into a kill zone. And the platoon caught inside this maze of lethal ingenuity is running out of trail. The jungle tightens again. The traps grow closer. And something far worse waits ahead. The men of 3rd Platoon advance into terrain that grows narrower with each step, the jungle folding inward like a tightening fist. The morning sun finally pierces through the canopy, but the beams of light do little to warm the air or ease the tension. The temperature climbs. Humidity wraps around the soldiers like a damp shroud. Lieutenant Whitaker checks his map, though he knows it's barely worth the paper it's printed on out here. The jungle changes shape by the day, and booby traps don't show up on Army-issued topography. He kneels and whispers to Sergeant Rourke. "This doesn't look like a normal trail. It's too intentional." Rourke grunts. "Feels like we're being channeled LT." And they are. The corridor ahead narrows to barely 6 feet wide, flanked by dense thickets of thorny bamboo, impossible to move through without giving away their position. The platoon has no choice but to continue forward. It's the only navigable path, and the Viet Cong know it. Specialist Hargrove leads the way, scanning every root, leaf, and shadow. Sweat drips off his chin, though the air barely moves. Behind him, the soldiers follow in a tense, stretched-out file, each one silently praying the man ahead steps clean. Then Whitaker sees it. In the mud beneath Hargrove's boot-to-be, a faint depression, shallow but too circular. Too intentional to be natural. "Stop," Whitaker hisses. Hargrove freezes mid-stride, gaze locked downward. Slowly, he crouches, brushing aside debris. Beneath the surface lies a shallow trench, lined with stripped bamboo stalks. Each stalk's tip is shaved to a vicious point. The stakes aren't upright. They're angled forward at a diagonal aimed directly toward the shins and knees of anyone stepping onto the disguised surface. A forward-angled punji board designed not to maim, but to pin a soldier in place, keeping him upright as other traps deploy around him. Lovely, Hargrove mutters. This one's meant for a group takedown. Rourke inspects the edges of the trap and finds thin bamboo slats supporting a surface of leaves and dirt. The slightest pressure would send a soldier plunging into those jagged spikes. Whitaker feels a cold certainty creeping in. This isn't random placement. They want us slowed down right here. Or stuck, Rourke adds. because just above the punji board tied between two narrow trees, Hargrove notices a nearly invisible tripline, a taut strand of fishing wire. Hargrove traces it with his eyes to a small wooden trigger arm linked to a vertical bamboo pole spring tension ready to release. But what the pole is connected to makes the men's blood run cold. A bundle of sharpened bamboo spears, each the length of an arm, each tipped with dung. An infection guarantee hangs overhead, suspended by twisted reeds. When the tripline pulls taut, the spears would drop like a guillotine. A punji pit and a deadfall spike trap combined. Whitaker whispers, "They're expecting a squad here. Maybe more." Rivera, the demolitions man, steps forward quietly. "Sir, give me 2 minutes. I can neutralize it." Whitaker nods and signals for the men to hold position. Rivera works meticulously, cutting tension lines, immobilizing the bamboo poles, and burying the spear bundle in the mud to render it harmless. When he's done, he wipes his brow with a trembling hand. "That's the 4th multi-layered trap in less than 2 hours, Rivera mutters. "This route is engineered." Before Whitaker can respond, the crackle of nearby brush snaps every head around. Not a trap, footsteps. Light, deliberate moving parallel to the platoon. Whitaker signals quietly. "Contact unknown, hold." The men crouch, weapons raised. From somewhere beyond, the dense bamboo voices whisper. Foreign syllables. Calm. Measured. Vietnamese. The Viet Cong are shadowing them. Collins grips his M16, tight knuckles pale. "Sir, they know exactly where we are." Whitaker nods grimly, and they're waiting until we hit their main line. A sudden metallic clink echoes through the undergrowth. Everyone freezes. Hargrove turns toward the sound, eyes widening. Grenade pin. Before the men can react, a fragmentation grenade arcs through the trees and lands somewhere up the trail ahead. It skids once, twice, and disappears behind a fallen log. "Grenade," Rivera shouts. The explosion hits a fraction of a second later, a deafening roar, shrapnel slicing through branches, a shockwave kicking dust into the air. The lead element of the platoon dives for cover. Whitaker feels the blast in his ribs. Leaves rain down like shredded confetti, but the explosion wasn't aimed to kill them. It was aimed to startle them, to make them move without thinking, to flush them forward. Rourke rolls to his feet, shouting, "Watch the ground, watch everything!" But it's too late for the point, man. Hargrove, disoriented from the blast, stumbles forward, right onto a pressure rock disguised as part of the trail. A hidden bamboo snap trap detonates. A foot-long spike swings upward on a spring-loaded hinge, slamming into his thigh. He collapses with a scream, clutching his leg as blood pours between his fingers. Whitaker dives to him. "Hargrove, stay with me." The jungle erupts with distant movement, branch snaps, rustling foliage, soft running footsteps. The Viet Cong aren't attacking directly. They're herding the platoon deeper, into the kill corridor, into whatever nightmare waits ahead. Whitaker signals for his men to drag Hargrove to cover, but even as they move, one fact becomes horrifyingly clear. The traps aren't slowing down. They're increasing, multiplying, and the platoon is running out of safe ground. Chaos presses in on the platoon as Specialist Hargrove bleeds into the mud, his face twisted in agony. The bamboo spike juts from his thigh like a splinter from a broken spear. Lieutenant Whitaker kneels beside him, hands shaking as he cuts away fabric to assess the wound. The spike didn't hit the artery, that's the only good news in a sea of bad. Medic Corporal Daniel Keene rushes forward, dropping to his knees. "I got him, LT." He clamps gauze against the wound, wrapping Hargrove's leg, while the plaid-patterned jungle around them hums with invisible movement. Whitaker lifts his head, scanning the trees. "They're driving us somewhere. We can't let them dictate the route." Rourke agrees. "But sir, we can't go back. Too many traps behind us." He's right. Retracing their steps through a minefield newly awakened by enemy presence would be suicide. Whitaker takes a slow breath, tasting the metallic tang of the explosion still lingering in the air. "All right. We keep moving. But nobody steps without the man ahead confirming the ground. He signals his men into a tighter formation with Rivera and Keene supporting Hargrove as they limp deeper into the corridor. Every step feels like treading on the edge of a blade. Ahead, the vegetation becomes denser, darker. The bamboo thickens, arching overhead like ribs of an enormous beast. The air grows hotter. Insects buzz in a frantic swarm. The smell changes too, something acrid and earthy, almost like burnt tar. Whitaker whispers, "You smell that?" Rourke nods. "Yeah, VC cooking fires. Or worse." As they edge forward, Specialist Tomas Rivera stops abruptly and raises a hand. "Hold up. Something's off." The trail splits into two narrow paths left and right. Both look identical, both suspiciously clear. Danister murmurs, "Two clean trails, that's never good." Whitaker crouches near the ground, running a fingertip lightly across the soil. The left trail has faint drag marks, too linear, too precise. The right trail's soil is disturbed in irregular patterns. Rourke steps beside him. Left side looks like they pulled something across it. Or set something under it, Whitaker adds. He gestures for Rivera to check the left path first. Rivera inches forward, probing the dirt with his bayonet. The soil gives way too easily. He presses deeper and hears it, a hollow thud. "A pot trap," Rivera mutters. "Grenade inside a metal can buried shallow." Whitaker's stomach knots. A simple step would have sent shrapnel blasting upward into a man's torso. Rivera backs away. Right path safer, or at least it's less rigged. Whitaker signals for the platoon to take the right path. But the jungle is ready for that choice. 10 feet down the right trail, Private Collins notices the ground trembling faintly beneath his boots, not from weight, but from vibration. "Sir," he whispers, voice tight, "something's moving under us." Whitaker kneels again, studying the soil. It's loose, mounded in patches like it was replaced recently. As he scoops dirt aside, he exposes something horrifying. A network of bamboo tubes, each leading into a deeper cavity beneath the trail. A concealed Fugaz-style fire trap. Rourke recognizes it instantly. Oh hell, oil pots. Inside the holes sit clay jars filled with thick, flammable sap and kerosene. Thin bamboo fuses connect them. At the end of the line, buried deeper, is a crude detonator rigged with a pull pin. If triggered, flames would rip upward through the bamboo tubes, turning the trail into a burning inferno. Whitaker whispers, "They wanted us funneled through here, then roasted alive." Rivera adds the VC call this the Gia Hoa, the ground fire. Keene glances at Hargrove's bandaged leg. "We can't go through. He won't move fast enough." Whitaker thinks quickly, scanning the tree line. There must be a safer way around, something the VC considers too difficult for Americans to attempt. Then he sees it, a cluster of massive tree roots forming a natural archway off the main path. Dense vines hang over it, obscuring the entrance, but not completely. A faint footpath winds through it, almost invisible unless searching. Whitaker approaches slowly. No wires, no disturbed soil, just roots and shadow. Rourke frowns. Could be another trap. Whitaker nods. But it's the one they didn't expect us to find. He clears the vines aside and tests the first root with the weight of his boot. Solid. He signals the platoon. "We go through the root path. Stay low, watch your footing, move." The soldiers file through the natural tunnel one by one. The air becomes cooler, the canopy tightening overhead until only slivers of light penetrate the gloom. The roots curl like petrified snakes along the ground. Hargrove grits his teeth as Keene guides him carefully through the tight space. Just as the last man clears the tunnel, a distant sharp crack echoes behind them. A fuse igniting. Whitaker spins around. The Fugaz line, it's triggered. A split second later, a pillar of flame erupts along the trail they narrowly avoided. Fire shoots upward in violent jets, devouring bamboo and underbrush in a roar that shakes the ground. The platoon watches in stunned silence as the fire trap consumes the entire right path. If they had been 30 seconds slower, every man in the rear squad would have been engulfed. Collins whispers, voice trembling, "Sir, they're not just trapping us. They're predicting us." Whitaker feels the weight of that truth settle on his chest. The Viet Cong know the terrain with obsessive intimacy. Every inch of this jungle is weaponized. Every trail is a test. Every choice leads them deeper into a battlefield designed to kill them without a single shot fired. The route path opens into a clearing, unnatural, circular quiet. Too quiet. Whitaker feels his skin prickle. The kill corridor wasn't the end. It was only the beginning. The clearing is wrong, too circular, too open, too silent. Lieutenant Whitaker steps forward cautiously, scanning the perimeter with raised binoculars. The air is thick with humidity and the fading scent of burning kerosene drifting from the fire trap behind them. Birds remain absent. Insects refuse to chirp. Even the wind seems to hold its breath. Sergeant Rourke senses it too. Feels like we just walked onto a plate, he mutters. The ground underfoot is flat, almost perfectly so, except for patches where the soil is slightly darker, signs of recent digging. Around the edges of the clearing, the bamboo grows in unnaturally straight rows. It's not natural growth. It's construction. Whitaker signals for Rivera and Collins to take the left flank. Keene and Danister take the right. The rest form a loose ring, while Keene settles Hargrove against a tree, checking his leg again. This clearing wasn't made by villagers, Whitaker says quietly. The VC carved this out. Rourke narrows his eyes. Question is, why? They don't have to wait long for the answer. As Collins approaches the left edge of the clearing, he holds up a hand suddenly. Sir, I've got eyes on something. Tripwire. No multiple tripwires. Whitaker moves beside him. What he sees makes his stomach tighten. Thin threads, fishing line taut and nearly invisible, crisscross the clearing in layered patterns. Some are ankle height, others at waist level. One set is strung horizontally between two low bushes barely 3 inches off the ground. Another is tied to a cluster of bamboo reeds 30 feet away. It's a web, a spider web of traps. Rourke crouches beside the nearest wire, examining it without touching. Sir, this ain't random. Someone mapped this out carefully. Rivera follows one strand with his eyes until he spots a spring-loaded bamboo tube, half buried in soft soil. Inside the tube, he sees the faint outline of sharpened spikes. The slightest disturbance would launch them like darts. Danister points toward a cluster of palm fronds on the opposite side. Sir, look at that mound. A patch of earth raised, slightly covered with broad leaves, perfectly placed in the center of the clearing. Whitaker approaches slowly. He crouches, peeling back one leaf. What he finds beneath it steals his breath. A central command trap. A mechanism of bamboo gears, tension rods, and weighted levers all interconnected. It's a nerve center where multiple tripwires feed into one collapsible spine. Triggering any single wire wouldn't just set off one trap. It would activate the entire grid. Hargrove, pale but conscious, watches from where he's propped against a trunk. Sir, that's genius. Sadistic genius. Rivera nods grimly. This is beyond standard VC fieldwork. This is engineered. Someone with serious expertise designed this. Whitaker straightens, meaning the architect could still be nearby. The thought twists through the platoon like cold wind. Collins grips his rifle tighter. Danister's eyes sweep the tree line with renewed urgency. Then, from the brush beyond the clearing, a faint metallic click echoes. Not a gun, not a grenade, a camera shutter. Whitaker's eyes snap toward the direction. Did you hear that? Rourke nods slowly, face darkening. Sir, they're watching. A shadow shifts behind a tree. Maybe a figure, maybe camouflage. Another click, a soft, rapid double snap. The Viet Cong aren't just hunting them. They're photographing the results. A psychological strike. Documenting American vulnerability. Studying reactions. Learning patterns. Whitaker gestures silently to Rivera. Which wire leads out cleanest? Rivera studies the tangle with laser focus. This one, he whispers, pointing toward a thread barely visible in the filtered sunlight. If we step exactly between these two roots, we'll miss the tension line. Lead us, Whitaker orders. But as Rivera positions himself for a closer look, a sudden rustle erupts from the right tree line. Leaves shake, branches sway. A figure darts from behind a trunk, too fast to track, too quiet to identify. Rourke fires a warning burst into the brush. The shots punch into bamboo, echoing through the clearing. Birds explode from treetops half a mile away, but the shadow is gone. Whitaker grits his teeth. They're probing us, seeing how we react. The platoon tightens formation. The clearing seems to pulse with danger, the wires shimmering like strands of a deadly web. Every soldier feels the weight of unseen eyes tracking them. Keene whispers urgently, "Sir, Hargrove can't move fast. We gotta get him out first." Whitaker nods. "We'll manual carry him." Rivera clears a narrow path by cutting a single, non-triggering vine, then carefully lifting a set of loose fronds to reveal a strip of untouched soil. It's only a foot wide, winding between two root clusters, but it's passable. Rourke Whitaker says you and I have point. Collins and Keene carry Hargrove. They form into a tight file, every man stepping exactly where Rivera instructs. One misstep could trigger the system. Every breath feels heavy. Leaves brush their sleeves like accusatory fingers. Sweat drips into eyes unblinking. As they near the far side of the clearing, Rivera pauses and raises a fist. "Hold," Rourke whispers. "What now?" Rivera points with the tip of his bayonet toward a dark shape half buried in soil. Whitaker leans in. A metal canteen. American issue. Old, rusted, placed deliberately. Rourke growls bait. Rivera nods, and the center of another trapline. Whitaker exhales. The VC are guiding them into psychological traps now as much as physical ones. This clearing wasn't just made to kill. It was made to study how Americans hesitate, how they respond, how they fear. But finally, carefully, they reach the other side. As the vines close behind them, sealing the clearing from view, Whitaker turns back one last time. The web of triplines stands perfectly still, waiting for the next patrol, waiting for the next set of footsteps to study, waiting to strike. And Whitaker realizes the final truth. The traps are evolving, and the enemy is watching every step. The jungle beyond the clearing feels different, denser, darker, as though the forest has tightened its grip around 3rd Platoon. Lieutenant Whitaker leads the column along a narrow, uneven trail, stepping with the precise caution of a man walking across thin ice. The air is thick with the heavy odor of damp earth and rotting vegetation. Each breath carries the distant echo of the clearing. They escaped the interconnected traps, the camera shutter the unseen watcher. Hargrove leans heavily against Corporal Keene and Private Collins as they support him. His face is pale, jaw clenched against pain, but his eyes remain sharp, scanning every tree, every patch of soil, as if helping keep the platoon alive is his personal battle now. Sergeant Rourke whispers from the rear, "Sir, we can't keep this pace forever. We need elevation. Terrain they can't rig easily." Whitaker nods. "I know, but first we get out of their funnel." It's no longer a suspicion. It's fact. The Viet Cong have crafted a perfect psychological labyrinth. A maze of traps designed not only to wound and kill, but to corral, to shape decision-making, to predict American behavior, to weaken morale step by step. Every soldier feels the weight of being studied. The jungle around them grows unnervingly quiet again. Rivera stops abruptly. "Sir, look." Up ahead, the trail suddenly widens, opening into a slope that rises toward a rocky outcrop. High ground. The kind Rourke wanted. But the opening is too perfect, too convenient. Whitaker approaches cautiously. At the base of the slope, half hidden under a layer of leaves, lies a small bamboo pole. At first glance, it appears harmless. But as Whitaker brushes aside debris, he sees the truth. A bamboo pressure snare. A vertical, spring-loaded pole designed to yank a man upside down into the air. Except this one is different. A second mechanism lies beside it. A clay jar filled with metal fragments wired to detonate if the snare is triggered. A booby-trapped snare. The VC counting on instinct, a soldier is caught. His squad rushes to help, and the jar erupts. Whitaker feels fury rise in his chest. They turned rescue into a weapon. Rourke shakes his head. "We go around. No one touches that slope." Rivera and Whitaker scout the edges, circling wide, using fallen logs to probe the soil ahead. Every few meters they uncover something new, a shallow pit lined with sharpened bamboo, a tripwire hidden beneath rotten leaves, a deadfall log suspended by vines. The VC didn't protect the slope, they fortified the entire perimeter around it. Whitaker studies the slope again. They want us to avoid it. Rourke frowns. Then that's exactly why we need to go up it. Whitaker smiles grimly. Agreed. Rivera kneels beside the pressure snare. Give me 2 minutes. He neutralizes the vertical snap pole, cuts the tension vine, and carefully removes the detonator cap from the clay jar. The tension in the platoon eases, but only slightly. The climb begins. The slope is steep, but the rock makes footing easier. No soil to hide mines, no bamboo to conceal spikes. The air becomes lighter as they ascend, and the jungle canopy thins enough for shafts of sunlight to pierce through. At the top, a ridge overlooks a sweeping stretch of forest. The view is haunting, layer upon layer of jungle stretching endlessly, every tree concealing potential invisible threats. Rourke rests his hands on his knees. Up here we can at least breathe. Whitaker surveys the terrain. We head west. There's a river about half a click out. Once we hit it, we follow it to the extraction zone. Danister checks his radio, adjusting the antenna. I can get a signal from here. Should be enough to call for dust-off. But before he can transmit, a shot cracks through the air. The bullet slams into the dirt inches from his boot. Sniper down, Whitaker shouts, diving behind a stump. The platoon scatters behind boulders and clusters of brush. Rourke returns fire toward the tree-lined bullets, sparking off bark. The sniper fires again this time, striking a rock near Keene, sending shards across his face. Whitaker peers through binoculars, sweeping the jungle. Nothing. Then he sees it, a faint shimmer of movement, low and fast, retreating into dense foliage. VC Scout Whitaker mutters, "He's calling in our position." They have minutes, maybe seconds. Danister stabilizes the radio, voice steady but urgent. Falcon 6. This is Bravo. 2-4 troops in contact requesting immediate extraction at grid 529er. Priority wounded. Over. Static. Then Bravo 2-4 copy. Bird inbound, 5 minutes. Whitaker turns to his men. We hold this ridge. Rivera set claymores facing the slope. Rourke establish firing arcs. Collins and Keene get Hargrove ready for transport. The platoon moves with desperate precision, each man snapping into motion like parts of a well-tuned machine. Claymores are positioned. M16s are loaded. Smoke grenades readied for the helicopter. Below, faint rustling grows louder. Branches snap. More footsteps. The VC are coming. Whitaker grips his rifle and steadies himself behind a boulder. Get ready. The jungle erupts as figures burst from the underbrush. Black pajamas, AKs, raised voices yelling commands. But this time, the Americans are not trapped. They are not funneled. They are dug in with open sight lines and high ground. Detonate, Whitaker yells. Rivera squeezes the clacker. A wall of fire and shrapnel explodes along the slope, tearing through the first wave of attackers. The ridge fills with smoke and dirt. The platoon opens fire-controlled bursts, rattling against the incoming assault. The thrum of rotor blades grows louder overhead. The medevac Huey breaks through the canopy, tilting sideways as it searches for a landing spot. Whitaker waves a purple smoke grenade through the air. Here, land here. The Huey hovers, kicking up a vortex of dust as the crew chief leans out, shouting, "Move your man, move." Keene and Collins drag Hargrove forward. Whitaker provides cover fire, heart pounding. Rourke empties another magazine, yelling curses into the chaos. Hargrove is loaded aboard. Keene jumps in beside him. Collins reaches for the skid and Whitaker grabs him, pushing him up into the cabin. Go, Whitaker shouts. The Huey lifts off just as another burst of AK fire rips through the foliage. The platoon pulls back toward the crest, regrouping, forming a tight defensive shell. The sniper's camera, the traps, the funnels, all of it ends here. The ridge holds, the line holds, and for the first time that day, the jungle no longer feels like a predator watching them. It feels like ground they have earned. As the Huey circles back for the remaining men, Whitaker looks over the battlefield below, the maze of traps, the clearing, the smoke rising through the bamboo. And he knows one thing with chilling certainty. The Viet Cong's booby traps weren't just weapons. They were a language, a message. And today, 3rd Platoon survived reading it.